Today I'm doing my monthly manga reading log for February. I read 61 volumes, a manhua, and a webtoon covering 18 different series. I'll have timestamps below, so feel free to skip to whatever series you're interested in. And after going through my February reads, I'll share some of the series I'm planning to read in March. And I'll have links in the description below to my anime list where I track all the manga I read and anime I watch, as well as a link to my Instagram account where I share my current reads in my posts and stories. So here are my reads for February. The Bus Takes You and Runs. This is a 1-volume romance seinen series that is a collection of short stories that revolve around the encounters of people at bus stops. It wasn't anything groundbreaking because each chapter switches to different people, but I did really like the art style. The mangaka of this series was the artist for the series Our Happy Hours, so that's what actually inclined me to read this. But definitely worth checking out if you want something short and sweet and you want to see a bit of a different art style. Next is Yakuza Fiance Raisei wa Tanin ga ii. I read volume 2. This is an ongoing drama seinen series that follows 2 grandchildren of Yakuza bosses who are being set up to be married to each other by their families. But we see in this volume, there might be more going on than just that. But we get to meet a few more characters and see a little bit of the politics between the different groups. But this is a series I was following before the English licensing was announced, so I'm still just so happy to have it in English, and I'm glad it seems like a lot of people are enjoying it so far. My Dress Up Darling. I read volume 7. This is an ongoing comedy, slice of life, seinen series about 2 high school students interested in cosplay and the work that goes into making the costumes. So this latest volume continues just as the previous ones, with Gojo and Marin being super cute and wholesome. I had several points I just broke out laughing. This series is really funny. The shopkeeper man makes another appearance in this volume, and I just love how he's so helpful and supportive and always encouraging Gojo. It's worth noting that every volume has an explicit content warning due to fan service throughout, but I have noticed that some volumes have much less than others. So if that's something that maybe has been holding you back from starting this series. But I've been really enjoying it and now looking forward to the volume 8 release. Summit. This is an action suspense webtoon series by an artist that I like a lot. The artist EMW has a print shop with fan art that I've purchased from, and I found out they had a series on Webtoon, so I wanted to check it out. It only has 3 chapters out so far, so I don't want to give too much of a description because it would cover the whole 3 chapters, but it has a very futuristic vibe in a kind of dystopian setting. It reminds me of a mixture of Tron and Ready Player One, and the character designs have EMW's signature dark and edgy style. Honestly, just 3 chapters in, it's borderline too rough for me personally, but I'm gonna stick with it because the premise is really interesting. Sugar Sugar Honey. I read volumes 1 and 2. This is an ongoing josei comedy romance series that follows 2 working adults, a 30-year-old man who is a pastry chef at a bakery cafe who has a playboy reputation, and a 28-year-old woman who is a little clumsy and quirky, working as hotel staff after her long-distance running career has ended due to an injury. I really liked this read. It was very sweet seeing the start of their relationship, and I'm excited for the 3rd volume. This mangaka has another series I really like called Sesame Salt and Pudding, another josei romance series that I recommend. I love her art style and the characters are really fun. Neither of these series have physical English releases yet, but Sugar Sugar Honey is on Manga Plaza and Sesame Salt and Pudding is on Renta. The next series, Love is Strange Yet Delicious. This is a completed one-shot josei comedy romance that is by the same mangaka as the previous series that I was just talking about. It follows a college student who is disillusioned about romance and relationships because of what he saw in his parents' marriage. So he stays busy with work and school and as a result neglects his diet and just eats whatever is convenient. He doesn't think highly of his neighbor because of a relationship that she is in, but becomes entangled with her as she loves to cook and wants to help him with his diet. So I didn't like this one as much as the other two I've read by this mangaka because there were a couple characters that I just found really unlikable, and there is infidelity, and I didn't like the way it was portrayed and dealt with. But I did really like the main guy and all the parts of the story that had to do with food and social media. But I don't regret reading this because I like this mangaka and her art style. But if this series got a physical release in English, I wouldn't buy it to have in my collection. Next is Rainbow Days. I read volume 2. This is a comedy romance slice of life shoujo series. This is completed in Japan at 16 volumes, but this volume 2 is a new release. It follows 4 high school boys with very different personalities as they're each pursuing romance in their own way. So in volume 2, they're starting a new school year and we get to see them preparing for a school festival and we get to know each of the characters a little more. I really like this series. I have read it before and just recently watched the anime, so I'm already looking forward to the release of volume 3. Soko no Koisuru Baito Shokun. This is a completed one-shot shoujo comedy romance that follows 2 high schoolers at their workplace, a coffee shop. The main boy starts working there part-time because his uncle is the owner and needs extra staff. But his first day, he comes in and falls in love at first sight with his coworker. But just right in the first chapter, there are some pretty funny little twists right away. It's only 4 chapters, so if it was a little longer, I would have been happy, but it was a quick read and I did enjoy this one as is. But this is by the same mangaka as the previous series, Rainbow Days. And I really like her art style and character design, so I had a feeling I'd enjoy this one, which I did. A Galaxy Next Door. I read volume 1. This is a seinen comedy romance series with some sci-fi elements. And it follows a mangaka who is struggling with his workload while also raising his younger siblings. But he gets a new assistant who is very skilled, who then also rents a room from him, and he finds out some strange things about her. I went into this one with no expectations, and the story was enjoyable, but it didn't really suck me in, which is why I only read volume 1. But I'm probably going to continue into the next couple volumes to see if this is a series that I'm going to like. A Condition Called Love. I read volume 1. This is an ongoing shoujo romance series set in high school, and it follows these 2. I really like this series. The romance is really cute, and it gets cuter and cuter as you get to know them better. The main guy, Hananoi-kun, seems a little suspicious in the first couple volumes, but I'll vouch for him. He has his reasons why he acts the way he does, and I absolutely love him. I have read through volume 10 of the digital release, but I think I'm going to stop following the digital releases and just reread the physicals as they're released until it catches up to where I've read. But I really hope everyone's going to give this one a try. It's super cute and very sweet. Next is Love of Kill. I read volumes 9 and 10. And this was a reread. I did just read these in January, but I love this series and a lot happened in volume 10 and I needed to reread it because it still wasn't really sinking in. But this is a josei drama action series that follows an assassin and a bounty hunter. And I mentioned in my last log that in volume 10, things take a turn in a different direction, which I wasn't expecting. So really curious where things are going to go next. I have seen an upcoming volume cover that makes me think there will maybe be more flashback scenes. So just really curious what's going to be revealed. '18 Unlimited. This is an ongoing manhua series. It has 260 chapters out and I only read about half of it. It follows two high school boys in a very slice of life way with some rude teenage boy humor. I thought it would be similar to 19 Days, which has a very similar premise, but I personally found 19 Days more of an enjoyable read. I also thought it would have some similarities to Here You Are, because Here You Are had a couple crossover chapters with 18 Unlimited, with the boys drawn in Dijun style in their story. So before starting, I thought it would have a similar vibe or a similar art style, but they were nothing alike. I did decide to drop this one because I just was not enjoying the story and I really didn't like the art style. I thought the art style might improve as the story went on, but when I was considering dropping it, I did skip to the more recently released chapters. And they were just the same as far as the art style, so I was a little frustrated that I spent so much time reading this one and would definitely recommend Here You Are or 19 Days in place of this one. Snow White with the Red Hair. I read volumes 22 and 23. This is an ongoing adventure romance shoujo series. I had already read these volumes, but volume 23 was a new release that I wanted to read out of the physical volume. So I reread volume 22 leading up to it. And I think this section of the story might be my favorite arc of this series. I believe it's from volume 21 to 25, so really looking forward to getting the next couple physical releases as well. I don't really want to get into the content to avoid spoilers, but as you can see from the covers, this section has a lot of Obi and Ryu, who are two of my favorite characters in Snow White with the Red Hair. But one of the things I really love about this series is the art style, especially clothing and accessories. And these volumes are really a treat because we do get to see a handful of characters at an event in formal wear. So just fantastic character designs, but I really like this series. It's just a real feel-good story with a lot of really likable characters. Next is A Silent Voice. I read volumes 1 to 7. I have the collector's edition 3.5-in-1 omnibus volumes, so these contain all 7 volumes. This is a completed drama shonen series that follows a boy who was just a pretty terrible bully in elementary school who terrorizes a deaf classmate. And then after she transfers out of the school, he becomes the victim of bullying by his classmates. And then following this, the whole rest of the story is about his attempts at redemption when he's in high school, as well as dealing with his feelings of guilt. I had watched the anime some time ago and remembered the premise and just some of the major scenes, but most of the details and the ending I had forgotten, so this was definitely like reading a brand new series. There were a lot of aspects of the story that I liked. I liked Shoya's gradual character development. For the most part, I liked the way the story was told. I don't enjoy watching depictions of bullying, but I feel like the elementary school sections were really realistic depictions of how this kind of situation could be without any decent adults stepping in. But this story is full of flawed characters, and there were quite a few just terrible characters that I disliked the entire read. But the one character I liked the whole time was Yuzuru, just a very feisty but sweet girl who kept doing her best to support and protect her sister. I didn't mind the art style at all. I've heard some people complain about it. I usually prefer just really gorgeous art styles and beautiful characters, but I feel like the art style in this matched the mood of the story. There were a couple really moving scenes that really touched me, but there were also a few things that really bothered me that I felt like were underlying messages toward the end of the series. It's realistic to me that not everyone will be held accountable for their share in bullying, but actual physical assault should have consequences. And I didn't like that it was like the mangaka was saying, violence can be an acceptable way to vent your anger if you feel like you've been wronged. Also, the message that it's acceptable to mistreat a disabled person if you feel justified in disliking them. No, it's never okay to mistreat a disabled person, even if you dislike them as a person. I really hated that the antagonist was constantly being apologized to and accommodated as if their reasoning and actions were acceptable and as if there was a requirement that they needed to even reconcile. Even if she was jealous of and hated this disabled person, which is fine, her actions were absolutely morally wrong and unacceptable. So ultimately, I appreciated parts of this story, but overall didn't like it because I don't agree with some of the messages toward the end of the series. But I buddy read this with my friend Cadence and a few others, and our group chat was just super bleak because I feel like we're all pretty opinionated and we all had different negative things to say about the series, but we all checked it off our TBR list and moved on. Okay, next, Jujutsu Kaisen. I read volumes 8 to 13. This is an action, supernatural shonen series that I just finished watching the anime toward the end of February. I usually avoid supernatural series, but a friend was really pressuring me to get into it because of my appreciation for the character designs. I heard the content following the anime was going to be really intense and tragic, so I probably wouldn't have jumped right into it because then I'd be stressed while waiting for updates. But it was recently announced that the series will be coming to an end in 2023, so I figured I would just get caught up since I wanted to know where the story would go and I had not seen any spoilers yet past the content in the anime. So of course I'd prefer to be able to read it all without having been spoiled, so that's what I did. So in February, I read the backstory arc and most of the Shibuya arc, and this is the content after the anime. And now recording this the first week of March, I have already read the rest of the Shibuya arc. Definitely, yes, very intense, a lot going on, some really tragic sections, and I've actually already finished the rest of the volumes and caught up to the latest chapter releases, but I'll share my thoughts on the rest of those volumes in my March reading log. Kono Oto Tomare. I read volumes 26 and 27. This is an ongoing slice of life shonen series that follows the members of a high school koto club. I have already read through volume 28, but my husband was finally catching up on the series, and he happened to be reading these 2 volumes, which have my favorite content of the entire series. And I literally sat behind him and read it over his shoulder while he read it for these 2 volumes. But I can't recommend this series enough, Kono Oto Tomare. It also has an anime that is really good, and I really hope we'll get an English print release of this series. Next is My Little Monster. I read volumes 1 to 13. So this is a completed shoujo comedy romance series set in high school. It follows a quirky girl who is obsessed with studying and having the best grades, and then a boy who is eccentric and wild, yet very sweet and honest. And it shows the challenges they have trying to have a relationship when they both have very bad interpersonal skills and have a lot of difficulty communicating. But I buddy read this series with Dragon Ball Zoe and another friend on Instagram and really enjoyed it. This has been on my TBR for a while, ever since I watched the anime, which only covers the first 4 volumes. And honestly, there was a section in the middle of this series that had me worried it would just be all back and forth and miscommunications all the way through to the end. But it took a turn and got into character backstories and then some good character development. And I really loved that the story didn't just end with the cast becoming third years or at graduation, but we got a bit more past that, and the ending was really satisfying. Also, I didn't realize until midway through the buddy read that the main story actually ends with volume 12, and all of volume 13 is side chapters with some bonus content from the fan book. So you can see it's a little thicker than the rest of the volumes. But I thought it was really cool that Kodansha translated and printed some of those extras for us. But overall, it's just a really funny series, and I feel like each of the characters are very unique. But if you've watched the anime and liked it, you'll probably really enjoy the manga too. The last series is Attack on Titan. I read my final 4 colossal editions, which contain volumes 16 to 34. So this is a completed action, adventure, military shonen series with some gore and horror elements. So I read the first half of the series in January, and while this was my first full read-through, I had already read the ending last year, the final 3 volumes, after having binge-watched the whole anime. So I was not surprised by any of the content during this read-through. But I was wanting to take it in manga format this time, and I really enjoyed it. I like the art style a lot, and I love the way the character designs really show each person's personality perfectly. And I actually prefer the way the manga revealed shocking twists to the readers compared to the anime. Overall, though, I do prefer the anime because of the impact of the story, along with the soundtrack and the Japanese voice cast. Just hearing the lines with their emotion really adds a lot compared to reading the printed text, but still really glad to have gotten these and to have read through the series, especially right before season 4, part 3, which I'm really looking forward to. I did want to mention too that I really enjoyed reading from the Colossal editions. They are huge and heavy, so I would just sit them in front of me while I read, but I was super impressed with the print quality. I don't want to open these to show because this is the final half of the series and it would definitely have spoilers. But I was really impressed with the print quality and especially the battle scenes and really emotional moments. It was really amazing to see them spread across these big, bright white pages. I also really love that each cover has a unique illustration on it with a different Titan on each cover. And these are different from the covers on the single volumes. But the Jaw Titan on the 6th Colossal Edition is my favorite of the covers and is my favorite Titan design overall after the Attack Titan. And of course, this one is super cool as well, the final Colossal Edition. But again, just really looking forward to the anime and hope all of the anime-only people can enjoy the conclusion to this series and can get through it without seeing any spoilers. So these were all my reads from February. I did also want to give a little shout out to my manga space for hosting the Bon Bon Readathon earlier in February, because that really got me to read a few new things that I otherwise might not have read. I also wanted to share what my tentative March TBR looks like. So on my March TBR was the rest of Jujutsu Kaisen, but when I'm recording this, a few days into March, I have already finished reading that. And then I do also have a few other buddy reads planned. So I'll be reading Orange with Bizarre Individual. This will be our first buddy read together, so I'm looking forward to it. I'll also be reading Dengeki Daisy with my friend Summer. This one has been on my TBR for a long time, so I'm really excited to be finally getting to it. Windbreaker, and I'm talking about the sports drama manhua, not the manga with the same name. But I'll be buddy reading Windbreaker with my friend Solène. She's been dying to have someone to talk to about it. And then with my friend Kat, we'll be reading The Fragrant Flower Blooms with Dignity. And it looks super cute, and I'm really looking forward to getting into it. But in addition to these, I'll also have some new releases that I'm going to be reading as I get them. And then in between these longer series, I'm going to be probably finding other things to read as well. But that's it for my February reading log and March preview. Let me know in the comments what you've been reading or what you have on your TBR. But I'll see you again soon in another video. Thanks for watching.